Hi, everyone. I am Miss Judy from the Red Bank Library, and today we're going to talk about History of Fun Stuff, the Deep Dish on Pizza. And this is a book by Stephen Kremsky, which you can actually get at the Red Bank Library. And we're going to talk about the story or history of where it came from, how it started, and how it ended up being one of the most popular foods around. So pizza may be the perfect food to some people, but it can be different things to different people depending on how it is made. You start with a crust made from dough, or at least it used to be made only from dough, but nowadays pizza crust can be many different things like cauliflower crust, English muffin crust. I even saw a recipe for mini pizzas made on slices of zucchini. And then, of course, there's the toppings. So, of course, we start with tomatoes, tomato sauce, but then and cheese, and then we might add on pepperoni, extra cheese, mushrooms, bacon, onions, anchovies, spinach, sausage, green peppers, pineapple, barbecue chicken, black olives, smoked mozzarella, broccoli, artichokes, and actually everything and anything. And I'm sure there are things that you and your family put on pizza that are not on that list, but everything goes. There is no right or wrong way to top a pizza. But did you ever stop to think about where pizza came from, how it all started? So we do know that people in southern Italy, like the city of Pompeii, were eating pizza over 2,000 years ago. And this is a picture of an oven that they think was used to make pizza. And it was found in the ruins of Pompeii, which unfortunately was destroyed by a volcano. If you think about it, this oven looks a lot like pizza ovens we use today, and I'll show you a picture of that in a little while. And it looks very much like pizza ovens that have been used throughout history, which we will see. But after Pompeii was destroyed, it was a while before people ate pizza again. So, believe it or not, pizza was actually born somewhere else, and it started out as flatbread. Hundreds of years before pizza was eaten in Pompeii, the Greeks would mix flour and water together to make it dough, and it was very much like the pita we have now. They made it into a flatbread, and they seasoned it with herbs, and they cooked the dough on a hot stone. Now, around the same time, the Egyptians had a similar flatbread made from the dough, made from dough, to which they added yeast, which is a little bit closer to the pizza crust we have today. This made it rise up into a puffier flatbread that was easier to chew. And this version, unlike Greek flatbread, was used as an edible platter for stews and broths and things like that. And, sometimes there are restaurants that will use flatbreads or bread as a vessel for soup or stew or anything like that. So it's been done in modern times as well. The early pizzas didn't have a lot of toppings on them, but we said the Greeks only seasoned their flatbread with herbs. And these flatbreads were an easy way to feed large numbers of people. Many large armies used them to feed their soldiers, who often used their shields as a flat surface to cook their flatbread. Now, depending on which country the soldiers came from, they may have actually topped their flatbreads with things other than just seasoning, things like cheese and dates. And it was used a lot to feed large armies since it was an easy way to keep them fed. So probably at that point, there were a lot of different kind of toppings on the flatbreads. So this is a map of the Mediterranean, and you'll notice that Italy, Greece, and Egypt that we talked about. Well, Italy is is considered the home of pizza, and Greece and Egypt had their flatbreads, and they're all around the Mediterranean Sea. And in fact, many countries around the Mediterranean Sea have some kind of flatbread that they use in their food. We mentioned that the seasonings were the most common toppings for early versions of flatbreads, or maybe some other foods that some of the armies ate or other people ate. But the pizza we know today with tomato sauce and cheese was not around. And one of the reasons for this was that there were no tomatoes growing in Europe or the Middle East. Tomatoes came from 7,000 miles away in the Americas, and seeds to grow tomatoes did not arrive in Europe until the 1500s, and they were brought back by explorers that went to the Americas. And you might or might not have learned about these explorers in school. but they came to the Americas. They found the seeds for tomatoes and they were intrigued by the vegetable and they brought it back to Europe. In the beginning, though, no one wanted to eat tomatoes because they grew close to the ground and people thought they were dirty. They also thought they were poisonous because many people got sick after eating them. But it turned out that this was because the tomatoes mixed with some of the metals in the plates they used. They made plates out of metals at that time. And this mix made people sick. By the end of the 1800s, they used different kinds of materials to make plates. And so eating tomatoes no longer made people sick, and tomatoes really caught on, especially in Southern Italian cooking. Because because the base for other, I'm sorry, and became the base for other toppings that sort of started the whole trend of dough, tomato sauce being the way to build your pizza. Now, as we know, pizza needs to be baked in a special oven. And this kind of oven was expensive, so most Italian villagers couldn't afford them. Only wealthy people and royalty can afford to actually have a pizza oven in their home. And it ended up that in a lot of towns, there was a shared pizza oven that everyone would use. These pizza ovens probably look like the one in the picture from the ruins of Pompeii and a couple of thousand years ago, and also very much like the ones we use today, which you can see in that bottom picture, looks pretty similar. And of course, also there is an illustration from the book that shows pizza oven that looks pretty similar to all of those things. Now, pizza became popular because it tasted good and it didn't cost a lot. It was a very popular street food, and when street vendors began cutting up the pizzas so they could sell them by the slice, it became even more popular because it was even cost even less. By the way, this simple pizza that was served by street vendors, tomatoes, garlic, oregano, and olive oil, was called marinara. And actually, a marinara is a sailor's wife. And the sailors' wives prepared this particular pizza dish for their husbands when they came home after a long time at sea and they wanted a good home cooked meal. Now, some people still wanted to sit down and eat pizza in a restaurant and not buy it from street vendors. So the first pizzeria opened in Naples in 1830, which is why Naples is sometimes considered the birthplace of modern pizza with all the toppings and the tomato sauce and everything. These restaurants had the same wood fire brick lined oven that Pompeii had and similar to the ones that we use today. But believe it or not, everyone did not like pizza, but what did they know? Most people did not agree with that, and in 1889, legend has it that King Umberto and Queen Margherita of Italy visited Naples to taste the pizza that was made there. And the owner of a popular pizzeria, Di Pietro, made several pizzas for the Queen, and one was topped with mozzarella, basil, and tomatoes. These colors matched the Italian flag, and so he made it specially for her. And this is supposedly how we got Pizza Margherita, which was named after the Queen. This is also probably when, in addition to tomato sauce, cheese became a popular topping. Now, European immigrants from southern Italy came to the US in the early 1900s. They brought pizza with them and introduced it to this country. They called it tomato pie. Wherever they landed, which was mainly in cities on the East Coast like New York, Trenton, New Jersey, Boston, Massachusetts, pizza was sold, but it was still sold mostly by street vendors. But soon, of course, as in Italy and Naples, the demand became so great that they began opening pizza restaurants. Probably the first one in this country was opened in 1905 by Gennaro Lombardi. He originally sold pieces of pizza out of his grocery store until the demand became so great that he opened a restaurant. But still, by the way, that the Lombardi's was around for quite a number of years, and it started out in the lower part of Manhattan in Little Italy. But still, most of the people eating pizza were Italian, and they quite often lived together in neighborhoods and sometimes called those neighborhoods Little Italy. And though people who lived in and around Italian neighborhoods enjoyed this Italian food, pizza was not widespread throughout the country. So how did it get to be such a popular dish? Well, almost 40 years after the first pizzeria restaurants opened in in the United States, Lombardi's in 1905, and even in Trenton, we had Papa's Tomato Pies in 1912, which I think is still open. Well, after that, American soldiers stationed in Italy during World War II were looking for things to eat when they went on leave. And those stationed in southern Italy found pizza. No big surprise that everyone from privates to generals who ate pizza loved it. So when they came home after the war with a taste for this Italian street food, these soldiers, they came home with a taste for this Italian street food. Now, these soldiers came from many different places across the country, and many did not have a place to get pizza once they were back home. So, in order to meet that demand, sorry, um, they had to start figuring out a way to get pizza restaurants opened around the country. Because at that point, pizza was still mostly available on the East Coast, where most Southern Italian immigrants had settled. After the soldiers came home, people in other parts of the country wanted pizza, and as it increased in popularity, which increased even more in the 1950s when Italian celebrities began to make it more popular, more pizza restaurants were opening in towns and cities around the country that were not on the East Coast. But it was still a local food found only in those pizza restaurants. And there were still many places in the country that didn't have pizza restaurants with people who wanted to eat pizza. However, pizza became much more available nationally as some of those pizza restaurants that opened up in different parts of the country started chains of stores all over the country so that people who didn't have access to pizza all of a sudden had a place where they could get pizza. One of the first pizza chains was Shakey's Pizza, and it actually started at a Shakey's Pizzeria restaurant in Sacramento, California in 1954. Shortly thereafter, a few years anyway, Pizza Hut opened its first pizza restaurant in Wichita, Kansas, and also spread out from there, opening stores all over the country. They were soon followed by Domino's, Little Caesars, Papa John's, and California Pizza Kitchen, amongst many others. Today, there are really not many places in the country where you can't find a pizzeria restaurant. And actually, some of the changes that took place after that made it even more available to everybody. So pizzas were baked in the restaurants, but many pizzeria owners began to sell pre-made refrigerated pies that weren't cooked for their customers to take home and cook. But again, only these uncooked refrigerated pies were only available at a pizza restaurant if you had one near you. It wasn't until the pizza chains like Shakey's and Domino's came along that the market for home delivery of pre-cooked pizza became popular and readily available to many, many different locations. It was so convenient. Someone else cooked it for you and then delivered it to you. Not that long after that, another even more convenient form of pizza arrived with the development of the frozen pizza, which basically made pizza available to anybody that had access to a supermarket. For those who wanted something quick, available anytime, without having to call in an order and wait for delivery, and could last a long time in your freezer, it was the ideal choice. The Celentano brothers started selling frozen pizza nationally in the 1950s, right around the time that pizza was at the height of its popularity, was getting to the height of its popularity. And Totino's, who operated a pizzeria restaurant in Minneapolis, Minnesota, also entered the frozen pizza game in the early 1960s. But there were still those who wanted fancier pizzas and they wanted to sit down at a restaurant. So there were plenty of pizza restaurants where chefs created pizza with all kinds of different toppings, some of them expensive, some of them simple, but that began a trend to put all kinds of different toppings on pizza, not just the standard cheese, tomato sauce, and maybe pepperoni or sausage. The taste for different toppings was behind the creation of other pizza restaurants like California Pizza Kitchen that was famous for its barbecued chicken pizza. Many of these pizza restaurants began to pop up all over the country and serve all kinds of different pizzas with different toppings, some of them using more regional foods that were from the places where the pizza restaurants were open. So let's just remind ourselves of the pizza toppings that are the most well-known, which is pepperoni, cheese, mushrooms, anchovies. I read it at the beginning, and you can see some of them on the screen that are a little bit different, like broccoli and pineapple and olives and ham and barbecue chicken. Those all came later. So notice though that pepperoni is at the top, and keep that in mind. So eventually, pizza actually became an international favorite. People came here, they tasted it, and they wanted it to take it back with them. And also, as Italians travel places, they became more likely to, if they moved in these places, more likely to start pizza restaurants. And very soon, it was an international favorite. So, what kinds of toppings do people in other countries put on their pizza? So we're going to look at some of the toppings from Japan, India, and Brazil. And the toppings on pizza in different places usually comes from the favorite foods from those countries. So in Japan, they have a pizza with mayonnaise, bacon, and potatoes. That's really popular. They also do put seaweed and corn, as well as other foods that they eat on their pizzas as well. So in India, there's pickled ginger, corn, um, and other things that are very similar to what we eat, which is onions, mushrooms, olives, and pineapple. So it's not that different from the pizza that we eat here. But Brazil, they go way out there. Brazilians would put all kinds of things on their pizza, and many similar to our toppings, like ham and sausage. But some of the more unusual are hard-boiled eggs and hearts of palm, and also Brazilian cream cheese and guava paste, to name just a few. They also like a softer crust. And apparently, Brazilians have a chocolate pizza, which is no big surprise, very popular. It uses Nutella as a spread, as a base on the dough, and then puts pieces of several different kinds of chocolate, like dark chocolate, milk chocolate, white chocolate, on top. And then they top it off with marshmallows. It sounds good to me, and it's a very popular kind of pizza in Brazil. So that's the history of pizza, one of our favorite foods, where it came from, how it's spread all over the country, and the different toppings that people use in the different countries and different places in this country. But before we go, I want to share some facts about pizza. Did you know that each person in this country eats an average of 46 slices of pizza every year? This equals 7.5 pies a year for each person. That comes to 3 billion pies per year for the whole country. And on any given day, 15 people out of 100 are probably consuming a slice of pizza. And as we mentioned, pepperoni is the most requested. It's the top of the list, and 1/3 of all pies are topped with pepperoni. So I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation, and you can stop by the Red Bank Library if you're interested in looking for more information from the Deep Dish on Pizza and other books that we might have on pizza as well. See you soon.